They told you freedom would come at 65, that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and climbed the ladder for 4 decades, one day you'd finally be free, free to travel, to relax, to truly live. Retirement was sold as the ultimate reward, a promised land waiting at the end of a long, obedient life. But what if that promise was never real? What if it was a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep you moving, producing, complying, without ever questioning the cost? From the beginning, the script was laid out: study hard, get a job, work for 40 years, then retire. That was the path, and most followed it without ever asking, who wrote this plan? But the truth waiting at the end of that road isn't liberation, it's disorientation. According to a 2020 study by the Stanford Center on Longevity, over 2/3 of American retirees feel lost within just 18 months of retiring. Not because they've run out of money, but because they've lost their identity. The system didn't prepare them for freedom. It trained them to function within a machine, not to live beyond it. Retirement isn't the grand finale they were promised. It's the quiet dismissal. The spotlight fades, the role ends, and no one tells you what comes next. And that's when the crisis begins. What do you do when the job that gave you purpose is gone? Who are you without the meetings, the deadlines, the job title that once gave you a sense of importance? For decades, your worth was measured in output, not presence. Now that the system no longer needs you, you're expected to simply enjoy life without ever having been taught how. Retirement wasn't about freedom. It was about timing your usefulness. It was never designed for personal discovery or spiritual rebirth. It was a calculated off-ramp, a graceful way to phase you out while making you believe you were being rewarded. That's the brilliance of the illusion. It doesn't sound cruel. It sounds like a gift. But as Alan Watts once said, you are under no obligation to be the person you were told to be. That one sentence unravels the retirement myth. Because if you were never meant to live by someone else's script, then retirement isn't the end of your story. It's the realization that the story was never truly yours to begin with. And that realization stings. Because when you really stop to think about it, this entire construct forces you to confront a much deeper question. What does it truly mean to be free if you've spent your entire life waiting for someone else's permission to actually live? We grow up learning to delay everything that makes life worth living: joy, rest, curiosity, self-discovery, as if the only time we are allowed to experience these things is after we've finished all the important work. The promise is always somewhere in the future. After you retire, you'll have your freedom. After you finish your career, you'll finally get to be yourself. But life, relentless and indifferent to schedules, never waits. It's been unfolding all along, every single moment, and most of us have been so preoccupied with preparing for this elusive future that we failed to notice it was already happening, right in front of us. So maybe the lie isn't only about retirement or the future. Maybe the bigger, more painful lie is that you ever had to wait at all, that you needed a green light from someone else before you could start living authentically. Freedom was never meant to be a destination on some distant timeline. It was always available, right here, right now, as a way of being. A choice you could have made at any point in your life, but no one told you that, because if they did, if we all knew that freedom meant living by our own rules and embracing life fully without waiting for permission, the entire system would lose its grip. A truly free person can't be controlled. They don't need a script to follow. They don't seek validation from others. They simply are. That's why a free person doesn't see retirement as some sort of reward or ultimate prize for enduring decades of labor. Instead, they see it as a stark reminder, an uncomfortable truth, that we traded the very best years of our lives for a promise that was never really meant to be fulfilled. If freedom wasn't the true goal all along, then what was? To answer that, we need to pull back and zoom out, to see the larger machine that shaped your life long before you could even begin to understand what was happening. Because what most of us blindly call normal is not natural or inevitable. It's the product of a system meticulously designed not to empower human beings, but to standardize them. Starting in the early 20th century, human life itself was quietly industrialized, not just the work we do, but the very structure of our existence. Childhood became a phase solely meant to prepare us for labor. Adulthood was defined by service to the machine. The life stages became rigid and predictable: education, employment, retirement, and then death. From the moment you entered the world, your path was set in stone. Go to school, follow the rules, pick a career, clock in and clock out, repeat the cycle for 40 or more years. And then, if fortune favors you, enjoy a few quiet, hopefully peaceful years before time runs out. But here's what almost no one ever told you. Retirement wasn't created for your benefit. It was invented back in 1889 by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, not as a compassionate gift to workers, but as a shrewd economic strategy designed to clear the way for younger, more productive laborers. It was a policy dressed in the guise of kindness, but its real purpose was cold and pragmatic. And over time, we collectively accepted this narrative as truth. The system never asked the simple but profound question of what kind of life you actually wanted. Instead, it only cared about how well you could serve its needs. You were never encouraged to ask why you work, only how to work better. You were not taught to challenge the routine or question the structure of your life, only to become more efficient within it, to fit more perfectly into the machine's endless gears. In 2007, the American Psychological Association published a striking observation: modern humans have never truly designed their own lives. They simply follow plans laid out by others. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's a brutal truth. From the moment we're born, we're handed a blueprint. Go to school, get a job, climb the ladder, buy a house, retire quietly, and maybe, just maybe, enjoy a few good years before the clock runs out. And for most people, that's exactly what happens. We inherit this invisible script and follow it without question. We give away our most vibrant, creative years to labor, often clocking in more than 47 hours a week, without ever pausing to ask the fundamental questions: what am I really working for? Who is this truly serving? What does any of this actually mean to me? Instead, we convince ourselves it's just what life is supposed to look like. But beneath this daily routine lies a deeper deception, one so insidious that many never notice it. The illusion that your life was ever truly yours. Because the truth is, from the very beginning, it was scripted, standardized, and ultimately monetized. The education system doesn't nurture self-discovery. It trains obedience and prepares you to enter the workforce. The labor system consumes your time and energy, and the retirement system quietly discards you when your utility has diminished. The entire pipeline is designed for output, not fulfillment. And tragically, most don't resist, not because they believe in it, but because they've never seen anything else. If all you've ever known is the machinery, then silence starts to masquerade as peace. But it's not peace, it's numbness, a quiet resignation, a subtle creeping surrender to a system that feeds on your compliance. You aren't free, you've just stopped questioning. And many don't realize this until it's far too late, until the machine slows down or stops altogether, and they find themselves sitting in the quiet, confronted by an unfamiliar stillness. In that moment, stripped of distractions and deadlines, they begin to wonder, where did my life go? Because when your days are dictated by schedules, quarterly goals, and milestones that always seem just out of reach, something inside you drifts away. You lose touch with the present moment, with your instincts, with your joy, with your inner compass that once pointed toward wonder, not productivity. You weren't born to be a cog in a well-oiled system. You were born to feel deeply, to explore endlessly, to create passionately, and to live fully. But a society built on control and predictability doesn't value that kind of freedom. So it sells you something else: safety, structure, stability. And in exchange, it slowly drains the life out of you. That's the real, unspoken question the modern world never wants you to ask. What if the life I've been living was never actually mine? Because once you start to peel back the layers, another truth reveals itself. The system didn't just claim your time, it shaped your identity. You weren't a person, you were a role, a title, a function within a larger engine. And when that role ends, when the badge and the meetings and the daily grind are gone, so too is your sense of self. This is the part no one prepares you for. The day after the retirement party, the morning when no one needs you to show up, when the calendar is blank, when your inbox is empty, and suddenly the silence isn't peaceful, it's terrifying. You're left staring into the void of unstructured time, asking yourself, who am I now? The National Institute on Aging reports that depression rates rise by over 40% in the first year of retirement. And not because of money, it's because people lose their purpose. They realize they don't know who they are beyond what they did for a living. One man named John, a 64-year-old engineer who recently retired, shared a haunting reflection on Reddit. I realized I never actually lived, I just worked. And now that the work is over, I have no idea what to do. John's story isn't rare. It's a reflection, a mirror that reveals the hollow truth behind countless lives. Lives that were so tightly bound to professions that the person inside slowly disappeared. Years were spent striving, climbing, producing. But no one ever taught them how to simply be. So when the striving ends, all that remains is silence. And in that silence, for the first time, they begin to hear the distant echoes of everything they postponed. Dreams left unrealized, joys deferred, questions never asked, creativity that was never allowed to breathe. This is the illusion we've all been sold, that your value lies in being useful, that your worth is measured by your function, but your soul is not a business, and your spirit is not a transaction. As philosopher Alan Watts once said, "You are not a role. You are the playing of life itself. You were never meant to be one thing, never meant to be permanently defined by a job title or a duty. You were meant to be, fully and without apology." And that's precisely why the system never wanted you to slow down. Because in stillness, you begin to remember. You remember who you were before the masks, before the expectations, before the paycheck. And that remembrance, that flicker of something real, is the beginning of true freedom. But even then, the machine doesn't really let go. It just evolves. It hands you a new script. You're no longer the worker. Now you're the consumer. The economy needs you to keep playing your part. So the moment you clock out of the workforce, you clock into an entirely different industry, one built around your remaining years. Now you're targeted by retirement marketing, cruise lines, life insurance packages, retirement communities promising vibrant living, real estate ads whispering, "Now is your time." It all urges you to believe this is when you finally live. But you must ask yourself, was it ever really yours? Or were you simply moving from one carefully curated phase to the next, each designed not for your liberation, but for your continued participation? And if that's the case, then perhaps the most radical act of rebellion isn't to escape the system, but to wake up inside it, to choose presence, to ask questions, to rewrite your own story before the final chapter is ghostwritten by habit and inertia. Because the truth is, your life was never meant to be outsourced. You were never meant to be a machine. You are not a product. You are not a project. You are a pulse, a possibility, a person. And the moment you reclaim that truth, really reclaim it, is the moment you begin to live for real.